a summary of our position on IGAD.
Well, the last time the IGAD declared that the mechanism has not arrived to peace, there were differences. One on federalism. Our position is that federalism be implemented during the transitional period, and because 3 years is a long time where it would be possible for the federal system to be adapted and implemented in South Sudan. So this is one major difference. The second major difference is in the security arrangements. There have been no substantial discussion on how we will reunify the armed forces, the security services, and the other security organs such as the police and prisons or correctional services. So this is the second item. The third, there's still differences in reform, particularly in the judicial system. We want the reforms to reflect the system of governance, and particularly federalism, because this is the only room when we can have meaningful reforms in the country. The fourth issue is in compensation and reparation. The government was adamant not to accept compensation of those who lost lives and property, particularly in Juba, Bou, Malakal, Bentil. So there's still disagreement there. The last is in power sharing. The government is refusing the reconstitution of the elected structures, such as the national legislature, the state assemblies, and also the state governments and the national government. We are saying, since the peace agreement is replacing elections, then we should reconstitute all these institutions so that everybody would be represented in the process. But they seem to think that the SPLM, SPLA should only be represented in Upper Nile, with zero representation in Greater Equatoria and in Greater Upper Nile states, Bahr Ghazal states. So these are the major differences in the peace talks. Well, in Arusha, we have signed the Arusha Agreement on the 21st of January, and we said we should continue discussing in Arusha by translating the Arusha Agreement into a constitutional code, because, as you know, the differences happened in the Constitution, the debate, the deliberation on the Constitution. So we have suggested to the grantors that the dialogue of drafting the Constitution should continue in Arusha, and similarly for the manifesto and the other basic documents. The government is adamant that this should be done in Juba. And as you know, that the war is still raging. It is not possible for us to send a delegation that would do a meaningful work in Juba. It was possible for the G10 because they are not part of the war. They have been quitted in the last trials in Juba. So those people are free to go to Juba and discuss with the government or the SPLM in government. But for us, because the war is still raging and we are involved in it, it would be unwise to send a delegation to Juba to pursue talks. But the differences were not on, these are just symptoms. The differences in 2013 December were on the constitution itself to democratize the SPLM. It was not positions. The war broke out while I was still the first deputy chair. So reinstating me to that position doesn't solve. Well, the Aguila group are virtually integrated now into SPLM, SPLA. We are one movement with them. As for G10, they opted to return to Juba, and I believe they are part of the SPLM in government. So we will treat them as part of. They may be stakeholders within the SPLM in government, but not a separate group. They will have to clarify their position. If they think they're a different group in Juba, as SPLM, and Pagani is still the Secretary General, and the members of the Politburo Bureau, such as John Luke, Dengalor, and Kosti, are reinstated, and they still treat themselves different. I doubt that. How would such a situation persist? Well, the initiative made by President Uhuru was a good initiative. He wanted me and President Salva to have a quiet time to discuss issues. And so I accepted to come to Nairobi, and he did bring us together. Unfortunately, President Salva was not ready to discuss peace talks. We learned later on that he came to talk about Arusha, and his delegation was composed of his team that usually went to Arusha. So there was no substantial progress over it. So he went back, and the president asked us to present our positions. We now have presented our position in writing on the piece, and there's document over this, which is the SPLM SPLA position, IGAD plus mediated peace process for sustainable peace in South Sudan. This is our position. We yesterday printed it, and we have given this to the president, and we'll also distribute it to the members of IGAD Plus and anybody who is interested in peace in South Sudan. This position clearly states our position on the peace process. You know, we have been competing with time since the beginning of the year. The IGAD mediators worked hard to ensure that there would be a peace deal signed. This effort was done in end of January and beginning of February this year. Unfortunately, there was no agreement in sight. Another trial was made last March, and the deadline was the 5th or the 6th. There was no agreement. We were running against time because the national legislature, the state governments, including the state assemblies, should be dissolved by the 8th of March, because by our law, there should be 90 days for elections to be conducted and the results declared, and a new president elected, and new governors, and new national legislature and state assemblies. So we were competing against time. that has not become possible. The government, we understood that in April, they extended their lifespan. This we did not recognize because it's not in the Constitution, and they also used an assembly which its life has expired by the 8th of March. We should have had a president by the 21st of May, which was the day when Salva Kiir was inaugurated. So that day we should have had a president-elect, and by the 9th, that president would be inaugurated. The regime in Juba has denied people of South Sudan to exercise their right, electing their leaders in elections. So now the date of the 9th is coming. It's only some hours.
Yeah.
President Kiir will be legitimate. His institutions will also be illegitimate. We will have constitutional crisis. He is trying to force people to accept the unconstitutional amendment they did to the Constitution. We resist that, and in actual fact, we think Salva Kiir should resign, and a caretaker president comes in who would bring about peace. So we already now have constitutional crisis. Well, first of all, losing legitimacy, this is an important departure. The rest of the world used to tell us, this is an elected president, this is an elected president. He becomes illegitimate, although a de facto regime in Juba. And since we're committed to bringing peace, we'll always explore ways and means of bringing about peace to South Sudan under such circumstances. But the fact of the matter is we have constitutional crisis already. We will have no legitimate president, no legitimate institutions in South Sudan, and this is going to be a very serious matter. For people of South Sudan, my message is that they should understand the fact that Salva Kiir is now an illegitimate president. His institutions are illegitimate. They will have constitutional crisis. We believe that Salva Kiir is not even qualified to bring about peace. We have given him chance to discuss peace with us. He has been intransigent to bring about peace. This is the time that people of South Sudan should think otherwise what to be done. The war is now spreading. It is in Bahr al-Ghazal. It is in Equatoria. We hope the people of South Sudan will see this point. In situations where it is possible to make their voices heard, they should make their voices heard, so that the world knows that this man is illegitimate. He has forced himself on people of South Sudan. He has prevented the people of South Sudan from conducting elections.